what's up, everybody? This is Zach back with the Better Than I Deserve channel. Today, we're actually going to do episode number 3 of the podcast. I have my guest here, Mr. Ryan Yonkers.
Hey, how's everyone doing?
So, the first 2 guys that I had on here were a little bit different than here. Ryan actually works with me on a daily basis, running as my program director for all of my housing in the clinical for my Orlando location. I wanted to kind of talk from the perspective of someone who has kind of worked their way up through the field. I think to get the perspective of someone that works in mental health and substance abuse, it only really comes good from someone who has started at the bottom and then worked their way up. I think sometimes when you see people who come in with a college degree, they don't really get the whole tour.
No.
If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? Like, if you ain't, like, drove dudes around and done all that stuff, you ain't really worked in the field. I feel like sometimes, you know, there's different positions and all of that. But when it comes to the day-to-day, I think it's super important. So let's start here. Like, why did you want to work with people in substance abuse and mental health?
So in 2017 was my first time in treatment.
Right.
And there was a lady that ran the house that we stayed at. And she was kind of like the house mom. That's what we called her. But she worked the overnight shift and everything like that. And, I was still kind of going through pause after my detox. And it was my first night in treatment. And I couldn't really sleep yet, restless leg, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, the fun stuff.
Right?
The fun stuff.
So I had gone outside to smoke a cigarette, and I'm sitting there talking to this lady, and she's asking me, what's my plan?
Yeah.
Like, what's your plan when you leave here? And I was like, I had the mentality at the time that my problem was heroin.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Just quit using heroin.
I had no concept of the fact that, I'm the problem.
Yeah.
And so I had told her, I came here, I'm getting off dope. Yeah. I'm going to go back to Chicago. I'm going to go back to my apartment and just start life over.
Right.
And she turned to me in that moment and she's like, you know what your problem is? She said, you don't know how to shut the fuck up and listen. And I was so mad. I was like, yo, do you know who I like?
You know who I am.
You know who I think I am, basically. And, she told me what I want you to do tonight is pray that God removes that obsession.
Right.
And so that's what I did. And God, I don't even know the last time that I prayed. But
Yeah.
that was my, simple prayer, every morning and every night,
Yeah.
And I still had no concept of, what that obsession was.
Sure.
I didn't know. But I just prayed about it. And I started to become open-minded. And I was like, okay, maybe I don't know what's best for me right now. Sure. I've never been in this situation before. Let me just take some advice for one time in my life.
I love that.
But she inspired me,
Right.
and I knew probably within the first week of being there, when I have enough sobriety, I want to work in this field. I want to start as a tech. Yeah. This is what I want to do.
How crazy is that, though? Let's talk about this for a second, right? And we've made jokes about this throughout my career, right? Because in 3 weeks, I'll have been working in behavioral mental health for 13 years. Yeah, it's a long time, right? And I've worked many, many different types. And we've had this running joke, and it's not so much a joke because it's actually really beautiful, really. And it's that, people come into substance abuse and or mental health treatment and they are self-centered.
Oh, yeah.
They are selfish. If you've seen someone in their first 2 or 3 weeks in treatment in inpatient or detox, they only care about what?
Themselves.
100%. That is, it is very extreme, right? But then you give someone 60 days and what do they want to do?
They want everything.
Yeah, but they also, 60 days, they want to help people.
Oh, yeah.
They want to work in the fucking field. It's mind-blowing, right? What is that, right? And in the 12-step, we always say that's God, right? Like that, we don't call it we don't try to explain it outside of anything of that. Does the scientific world maybe have a different explanation for it? Yeah, they call it a psychic change, many different things. But I think the interesting thing is that you can take someone who is as selfish and self-centered as one can be, and then in 60 days, they just want to help somebody else.
Yeah.
That's powerful, man.
No, it is really powerful. And, I truly believe that God put it on my heart in that moment that, like, this was my calling.
Right.
Like, and I knew once I got a little bit of sobriety that, like, I would really be able to help people.
Love that.
Why
do you think that is?
That I knew I'd be able to help people?
Yeah, that you just knew. Where do you think that came from?
I've always been this just like loving, caring, forgiving, just kind-hearted, and it's just always been in me. Ever since I was younger, but I was also afraid to be those things because of the outside world, what they thought of me, like one of my biggest fears is the fear of rejection. And that really ran my life for a long time, and I just knew, like, the rough and tough lifestyle that I was living, running the streets, being stupid and doing all the things I was doing when I was getting high. Like, I just knew that I was built for this shit. Like, I knew that I was built to be able to deal with all this shit and like be able to compartmentalize and not, carry that stuff home with me and like, and just understand, like, you're working it like in the disease when they come to that, PHP level. Like, the disease is heavily present.
Yes,
you feel everybody's energy and, but just being able to kind of like navigate that world. Because honestly, none of that was crazier than the way that I was living and the shit that I was doing on a day-to-day basis. So,
absolutely. It prepares you for it.
It really does.
Yeah, and if you look in the field, right, like especially like at that level of care, like the PHP, the housing level of care, which I think is where the work is done. You know what I mean? Like, listen, we have a lot of different levels of care for everybody out there. You got detox medical, you got inpatient, which and residential, which is more of your learning part of it, your 30 days. And then after that, you got the outpatient, you got the PHP with housing, you got the sober living. Sober living is where the work's done.
Oh, yeah.
There's no question. But, that work creates a lot of chaos.
It does.
Right? Because a lot of those, the people that come into that, they really need to fail and stay sober, and it's our job, and really your job. I used to do it, right? But it's your job to kind of be there and be of like the sound mind and saying, it's going to be okay. Why don't you pray about it? I hope the upset, like that lady told you,
exactly.
Exactly. That's our job. But it's interesting that almost everybody that works at that level of care is in treatment.
Yeah.
Or what, in recovery.
And, I almost think that you kind of have to be like, you could work as a BHT and not be in recovery.
Right.
I had plenty of coworkers at the last facility that I worked at that were not in, in treatment ever. They're not addicts or alcoholics. So, but it was interesting working with them because like they were, they had those same characteristics that I had, just kind of minus the experience. So like some of those situations, they didn't know what to say. They didn't know how to, help this person. The only thing that they could kind of do is give them some sort of hope, which but hope is really all we need,
That's
like,
it.
so yeah, it really doesn't make a difference, but I think, a lot of techs are, in recovery, and I think that, we just have that need to, want to give back and help. And when you find out that recovery is possible, man, you just want everybody to be able to have it. But then you also got to learn that, like, there's a lot of people that need it. There's a lot of people that want it, but this is here for those that do it.
There's a small number.
Small.
That's probably one of the hardest things about working in the field, right? Is because we know how small the numbers are.
Yeah.
And when we're spending time, I tell a lot of people I'm going to be doing some more videos, and really I'm going to be doing my dissertation on non-fatal overdoses, right? And what that experience can kind of lead to. But it's like super crazy when you look at these people coming in and all the stuff that they've went through to get there, and how few are actually gonna make it long term.
Oh yeah.
I would say in 13 years, I would say in the last 3 years, I've lost more people than the first 10 years combined.
Wow.
And it's just the fentanyl, right? It's not bad, good, and different.
Right.
It's just that the dope that's coming in is total 100% Russian roulette.
It is.
Every time, And then you get someone who's 60, 90 days sober and all their opioid receptors are, firing, right? And they're not clogged up or abused. And then you overload them with fentanyl, which is fucking basically what they kill elephants with.
Yeah.
And then you wonder why these overdose rates have skyrocketed.
Yeah.
It's sad.
I think last year was, well, I wouldn't say that was the worst year, but last year I lost a lot of people that were close to me, like from this.
Yeah. Well, that's about your time. What are you, about 3 years in?
Yeah, I'm almost 3 years right now.
That's like the time when people just start dropping left and right.
Yeah. And then, and a lot of these dudes were, former clients and stuff like that. But the rough part about it was, like with certain clients that come in, you kind of build different relationships. Absolutely. It really depends on the person,
sure.
And so you have different relationships with different people. And these were some young guys that I genuinely really cared about and just wanted the best for them. And they just kept bumping their head over and over and over again. And I'm glad they're at peace now. Sure. But
sad.
It is because these are two dudes that had so much to offer the world. Sure. And then there was probably 10 or 11 others last year. And it's scary to say that wasn't even the worst year. That's it. I think 2020 was probably.
Yeah, when they locked everybody down.
People were dropping like flies.
Well, think about it, right? We lock everybody down, and then we give them federal money.
Yeah. Let's isolate everybody from everybody.
And then let's give them money.
Give them some money, yeah. No.
I literally had a guy die. I'm not going to say his name. Beautiful guy. Mm-hmm. I mean, just pinnacle of the male species. Kind, sweet, tall, good looking. Got that federal money, And I remember standing in the driveway saying, bro, you don't go. This is 2 years ago. He said, I'll be fine. Mm-hmm. I got this. I'll be fine. Yep. His plan was to go live in a tent in the woods. 24 years old, dead 2 days later in a Red Roof Inn parking lot. Red Roof Inn and Cracker Barrel. Yeah. Dead. And it's like, would he have died? Maybe, I'm not trying to say federal money's bad. I'm saying for the drug addict, giving them extra resources for no reason is bad.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that was around the time when I relapsed as well. I had about 2.5 years sober. I was going home to Chicago for the new year.
Sure.
Weed was legal in Illinois now. So I had 2.5 years and I just had this mentality of and this was also before, when I got sober the first time, I white knuckled it.
Sure.
I didn't want anything to do with AA.
Sure.
I went to sober living. I lived in sober living for almost 2 years, became a house manager there while I was working in treatment and all this other stuff. And, but I was still oh shit, I was still hurting on the inside, I hadn't healed myself. I had removed the drugs and the alcohol, but and, I was like, oh, I'm going to smoke some weed. Did, and then kept smoking from that point on. And then 2 months down the road, I swore I would never do dope again, but that wasn't enough for an addict like me, I had no solution to the unmanageability of my life.
I get it.
So I ended up relapsing on the fentanyl and stuff. And it was terrifying though. I'll tell you this, it was it was probably the hardest I had ever beat myself up.
Yeah.
I had finally reached a place where I was really broken, like spiritually broken.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think I was that first time. You know, I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
think
yeah.
I was spiritually broken.
I get
but
it.
like this time I was. I'm working in treatment. I'm running groups. I'm high on dope.
We got to stop.
What's up, man?
Sorry, yeah. Well, I'm going to stop right here. We had to pause the video, right? Because one of our really good friends is in some trouble, right? And when you work in this field, you stop what you're doing,
Yeah.
you know? And we don't need to go into what that is, what that's like, what's happening. But it's just, to me, that don't happen in other work, right? It don't happen where you will stop whatever you're doing to make sure one of your friends is okay.
I don't give a fuck if it's 3:00 in the morning.
It don't matter.
It doesn't.
It's different, you know. So I kind of want to change directions a little bit, and I want to ask, because initially when I thought about inviting you on this podcast, one of my main reasons was to talk about your transition up to Orlando.
Okay.
Right? Because I think that, you know, for a lot of people that watch my my videos, they're either family of or people struggling with mental health and addiction issues. And one thing that we don't talk about a lot is transitioning in recovery. And that could be recovery from addiction or recovery from a mental health issue. Like it don't matter. And wherever you get help, that becomes kind of your safe spot.
Yeah.
Right. So your safe spot was, where were you at? In West Palm?
South Florida, West Palm.
Yeah, you were in the
that
West
area.
Palm area, right? And so your whole community, all of your friends, your job, your people, all of that was there.
Yeah, anybody that I associated with was in recovery.
Right.
You know?
And that's what a lot of people don't understand, is that when someone transitions, most of the time, when someone transitions into some type of recovery, right? Gambling, sex, drugs, mental health, depression, you really create a whole new batch of friends.
You really do.
Your whole network is shifted and changed.
Mm-hmm.
So how difficult was it for you to kind of move away from that?
It was difficult. I'd be
Sure.
lying if I said that it wasn't. You know, it was like having to start all over again, you know, and it was almost like being a newcomer. You know, I'm
Sure.
walking into these rooms and, you know, when you don't see a familiar face, you just expect that you kind of make the assumption that it's somebody new,
Right.
or whatever the case may be. But, you know, I just going to meetings and stuff, I've met a few people. You know, I wouldn't say that my circle is definitely not as big as it was down in South Florida,
Sure.
you know, and for me, it takes some time to, like, you know, build that, you know. I still deal with a lot of trust issues and stuff like that. So, like, and I'm just very, like, careful who, you know, I surround myself with.
Absolutely.
Recovery or not.
Yeah.
You know, because there's plenty of people that are still sick
Yeah.
in recovery.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
100%.
So-
And people that have never even been in recovery.
Yeah, so just navigating the world, and, like, you know, I made the decision when I got sober this last time and actually went through with the work, that, like, anything that, like, disturbed my peace and my serenity,
Yeah.
like, I don't keep it in my life.
Sure.
I don't have room for it. You know, I used to feel bad about, like, cutting people off, but, like, I'm at a point in my life now where, like, if you're not helping me grow or being a mentor, for a lack of words,
Sure.
like, kind of just showing me different things in life, you know, I don't need a relationship with you.
I 100% agree with you,
You know?
right? Like I tell people all the time, I say it more like in group. It's like, yo, I don't need fucking friends.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and what I mean by that is not that I'm some nomad and I'm fine. No, I need people in my life.
Of course,
you know
we
what
all
I mean?
do. We all do.
But I don't require to everyone I meet be their friend. Like, you don't
No.
have to like me, and that's completely okay. You know, and I think in therapy, that's one thing that actually helps me to be a good therapist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if I needed all the group people to like me, I probably wouldn't be a very effective therapist, because
yeah.
I'd be scared to say what I really want to say in lieu of them not liking me.
Oh, I get it. I mean, I was a people pleaser for
Sure.
a lot of my life, you know, and, you know, so even getting to the point where, like, I had the confidence to cut people just out of my life,
Sure.
you know, because It's difficult, especially for somebody that really struggles with acceptance and wanting to just be a part of. And, those are a lot of the things that I struggled with when I was younger.
Yeah.
That like I see still manifesting itself in my life from time to time.
Absolutely.
But I face it with courage and just and work through it.
So if you looking back, right? We all know hindsight's 2020, right?
Course,
like looking
course.
back on something is a different perspective, a different set of eyes, right? So looking back, if you could give someone some advice that was in your situation, what I mean by in your situation is they got sober, they got into some life of recovery in a certain area, and 1, 2, 3, 5 years down the road, an opportunity presented itself and they decided to move outside of that. What would be some tips or priorities that you would tell them that they should consider?
Stay connected.
Right.
Even just rely on your sober network that you have already built.
Right.
And until you kind of develop one in your new community.
Yeah.
And it was just, kind of going to meetings, meeting different people. It took me a while to get a sponsor out here, but
Sure.
I did probably after like 3 months. I was debating. I'm like, dude, I got a sponsor that's like 2 hours away.
I get it.
I could drive back down to West Palm.
Yeah.
He'll answer his phone anytime I call.
Yep.
So like I really struggled with that, but I did end up getting a sponsor. I plan to start working the steps again soon. I think
Sure.
I think it'd be good for me. I mean,
To go back through the process.
it's been almost 3 years since
Absolutely.
like I really like went through the work, but that's the cool thing about sponsoring people too, is like you get to kind of go back through the work with them.
Absolutely.
I've been sponsoring a couple of guys since I've been up here.
Sure.
So really just, taking action in my recovery, like
Sure.
doing something for my recovery every single day.
Yeah. And that looks, so for the people that are listening, that sounds like all work, no play, right? But what did you do yesterday?
Yesterday, what did I do?
Softball.
I had softball in the morning, and then I was with my girls
Right.
all afternoon.
But about the softball, right? Like, who do you play softball with?
My buddy Johnny.
Right. And so someone that you met.
Yeah, and it's
right?
a sober recovery league. So
That's what I mean, right?
Yeah.
So that's also being plugged in. Is
Oh,
what I'm trying to
100%.
lead to is that it's not just for people like, we go to these meetings and drink coffee and talk about our problems, right? It's really going out and being vulnerable. And so I'm wrapping that around. One thing that I talk a lot about that I try to tell people is how important hobbies are. Mm-hmm. For people in recovery or people, with depression or anxiety, hobbies are so important, right? Like having our energy directed towards something that we enjoy and that we can grow in is so powerful. And we don't talk about it enough. We're like, work. It's like, yeah, I get that. But joining that league, like to me, is like powerful. Right?
Oh, it was even just playing that. I played my first game about, I think it was 3 weeks ago.
Sure.
And just like being back out there on the field was awesome, because the thing about it is too, for me, my dad played softball like all me growing up.
Right.
And once I was older and everything, like he wanted me to join the team so I could play with my dad and stuff. But
That's cool.
but I was so fucked up on drugs, and I knew I couldn't make that commitment.
Sure.
Because I didn't want to let him down. Like,
Yeah.
be like, yeah, I'll be on the team, and then like I can't get any dope, so I'm not showing up.
Yeah,
and I know that's what it would have been.
The
and
handcuffs.
and so but I would fill in games from time to time if somebody couldn't make it. So I wish I got to play with him more than like what I actually did. But yeah, so like getting out there, it was cool. It just felt like being a kid again, man. It really did. Like being on a team. I played football and baseball all growing up. Like just the team element of it. Like I love it.
Showing up.
Yeah.
What do we not do in active addiction or mental health?
Yeah.
We do not show up. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like if you could put a characteristic around people that struggle with mental health, it's they don't show up. Mm-hmm. Right? So it only makes sense that changing those habits and behaviors and getting into a life that is opposite of that is really characterized by showing up, right? And we get so much enjoyment out of that by just like no different. We just took a break on this a second ago to show up for one of our friends, right? Like that's what we do, and it is really one of the characteristics of this type of life, right?
100%.
I love that. So I kind of want to end on talking about what do you want to do, right? Like what is your goals?
So initially, my goal was that I wanted to get my degree, become a therapist, and do all that. However, I also have dreams and ambitions of opening my own treatment center one day.
Yeah.
So kind of right now, I'm deciding whether or not I continue down my degree in psychology,
right,
or do I switch to business? You
don't do that.
You don't think so?
No.
Why would you say not?
I think business is a total joke of a degree.
Yeah.
Now, I think if you want to get your undergrad in business and then get your master's in counseling, it's more practical. Like you don't need a business degree to own a business.
Oh, of course not.
But if you get a licensed counselor, then you can start it and do it all yourself. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there again, any degree is better than no degree.
Oh, 100%.
So like I think that's another thing that I wanted to highlight. I knew you were going to say that before I asked, right? Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like leading in because I think for everybody out there, another very important piece, right, is constant growth, constant learning, right? I would say I hated fucking school, right? Like I hated school as a kid, right? As an adult, now do I love school? No, but I love learning.
Me too.
Man, I love learning. When I get on the other side of learning something interesting, it's the same way as going out on that field in the team and playing ball, right? And so I think that for people who have overcome some type of mental health is that if they can get in a habit of constantly learning and growing, they are better off.
They are.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Well, I appreciate you, man. You got anything you want to say to anybody?
Not really, man. Really just, if you're struggling, reach out. There's plenty of resources around, and that's one thing I am grateful for is that like today I think that these resources are way more in people's faces because like even back in 2017 I didn't have insurance. I didn't know how the fuck I was going to get sober.
Yep.
I can't afford a detox. I can't afford treatment. Like how am I ever going to get sober? And thank God for different foundations that are out there.
Absolutely.
That scholarship me into a detox.
Yeah, you got totally scholarship, didn't
treatment
you?
center. I did.
That's amazing.
And then that same person, when I relapsed 2.5 years later, who I called and let him know what was going on.
Yeah.
He said, "So what do you want to do about it? You want to go back to treatment?" And once again, another scholarship. But that's there are resources out there, and if you are struggling, reach out to somebody, man.
Oh, yeah. There's tons of scholarships out there.
There's a lot.
Yeah, man. People don't know. They don't advertise them, right? Because everybody would want one.
Exactly.
Right? But I think at any given moment, at each of our locations, we have 2 or 3 full scholarships.
Oh, 100%.
It's very common that every treatment center does that because it's ran by people that care.
Exactly.
Now, you can't keep the lights on for scholarship and everybody, but we all understand what it's like to not have resources.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, reach out because you don't know unless you reach out.
No, you don't. And you could reach out to somebody that you may not even have known was in recovery.
Yeah.
I had an interesting conversation with this girl that I went to high school with. I think she had just gotten 10 or 12 years of sobriety.
Wow, that's crazy.
But I had no idea.
Yeah.
I never would have thought it. I never seen her post anything in regards to it or anything. So, and then I had seen that and I just wrote her a quick little message or whatever. And we had a great conversation and it was cool to see.
That's cool.
And then come to find out her parents are both in recovery,
right?
And had been sober for quite some time. So luckily for her, she had parents who grew up in this shit.
Yeah.
And, she was able to get the help that she needed. But yeah, man, I have friends that call me all the time from back home that are just bro, I don't know what to do.
How'd you do it?
Yeah, I'm stuck.
Yeah.
my brother-in-law, he just called me, and forgive me if I'm putting too much on the table right now, but
run it.
he was struggling with spending money,
Sure.
like purchasing things, but then having like buyer's remorse and like only buying it purely for the rush that he gets from it, but then but it puts him in dangerous situations financially, and I didn't know, I didn't know what I could do to like help him,
Right.
But I did some research and I found out that there was like an Overspenders Anonymous
Hell
or
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
And, I suggested to him, I gave him some suggestions that I would give anybody that's in recovery, and gave him a list of where those meetings were at. And I know he's been going to them, and he's like the youngest dude in there. Like everyone else is like 70 and up, and he's what, 28, 29, I think. So yeah, man.
There are resources.
There are resources. I mean, you just have to. You can find them if you look for them. But you could always walk into a room, any one of the fellowships, and you can find some love and some hope there, and probably some people that could point you in the right direction if you're willing.
That's a fact. All right, cool. Thanks, man. I appreciate you. Everybody on there, check out the other videos, like, hit, subscribe, all the fun stuff. We're going to have more content coming to you, and I appreciate y'all tuning in. You're all better than you deserve. That's a fact.
Yeah, we are.
Yes, we are.